Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 5 of the Inferno 403 podcast, the most dangerous and diverse podcast out there in all of hockey circles. And we're extremely thrilled today to have the voice of your Calgary Flames radio, Mr. Derek Wills. I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us today, Derek.
Yeah, excited to be with you guys.
So I've got my first question to you is like a lot of times we hear your play-by-play, which is amazing. You've definitely fit into that role. You know, you took it over from a legend here in Calgary, and now you're becoming a legend yourself. What was the start like when you're a child? Did you when you're a kid? Is this what you wanted to do, or did it kind of switch into something else as you grew up?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm a long way from reaching the legendary status of Hall of Famer Peter Marr, but I'm working on it. Maybe one day, but it's something that I've had a passion about for a long time. I grew up a hockey fan. My dad was a coach. I started skating when I was 2 years old. My dad started the beginners program in my hometown of Port Colborne, Ontario, and was the first head coach of our junior B team there. So I've definitely got hockey in my blood, and I played up until high school, but I was always the smallest kid in the class, like literally boy or girl. I was the smallest kid in the class until grade 10 or 11. So I probably didn't enjoy the game as much as I would have if I'd been even just a little bit bigger. But I still really enjoyed playing hockey growing up. And it was in high school when I started to get interested in broadcasting. And it kind of happened by accident, to be honest with you. I would help out at school assemblies and plays and graduations, kind of working behind the scenes, doing audio and lighting and pulling cables and whatever I could to kind of just gain experience. And I thought, well, this would be an interesting career when I was trying to figure out what I would do with the rest of my life. So in grade 13 in Ontario, they have what's called OAC. So it's an extra year of high school, grade 13. You had to do a co-op placement for a semester. So I wanted to do something in the broadcasting world. And I remember having a choice between going to Channel 2, NBC in Buffalo, which seemed like a big deal, and the community television station, Rogers Community Town in Welland. And it seemed like a pretty obvious choice to me. You're going to choose NBC over Community Channel. But my guidance counselor, I'll never forget her, Mrs. Barchese, told me that if you go to Channel 2, you're going to be sweeping floors and getting people coffee, and that'll be pretty much the extent of it. And when your placement's over, it's over. She said, if you go to Channel 10, well, you're going to have an opportunity to experience a lot of different things, certainly off the air in the broadcast world. And it turned out that I kind of stumbled into an on-air position. One of the things I was working on for a couple of years was junior B hockey. And Niagara is the largest market in Canada without a major television broadcaster. So the community station there is actually pretty big and serves about 500,000 people. So we used to do 50 plus junior B television broadcasts a year. There were 7 teams in the league and we covered them all, and it was an absolute blast. So I was working behind the scenes doing that. And then one night the host didn't show up. So I don't know why I raised my hand, but I was 18 years old, like about 6'1", 165 pounds. I had a mullet and an earring and no experience. And I volunteered to fill in for the host that night and was absolutely terrible. I mean, think about the worst host you've ever seen. Multiply that by 10, and that was me that first night. I was terrible. But they saw something that they thought they could probably work with. So I did the hosting for a while. And then I went to college, kind of put the cart before the horse. I went to Niagara College for a year and a half before I decided that I could probably better use my time getting more practical experience at the TV station. So really dove in head first and got whatever experience I could, whether it was, covering sports, and I did a lot of different sports. I did St. Catharines Roma Wolves soccer. I did Brock University basketball. I think I did some high school badminton along the way. I mean, I covered everything I could under the sun just to get experience, and then would fill in doing different things on the news magazine show and the morning show. But hockey was definitely my passion. So I did the hosting gig. And then when the play-by-play announcer for the Junior B games would go away to Florida for a month every winter, I started filling in for him. And I enjoyed the hosting, and I think I was growing into the role nicely. But I really liked play-by-play, and I had a bunch of people come up to me and say, "Derek, you're a good host, but you're a better play-by-play announcer. You should go in that direction. So I kind of followed their lead and took their advice. And I guess the way I was able to get my foot in the door was to basically create a job for myself. So I went to a couple of radio stations, CHSC in St. Catharines and CGRN in Niagara Falls. And after negotiating I'll call it a rights deal with the Golden Horseshoe Junior B Hockey League to broadcast their games on the radio, I was able to work out a deal with the radio station where I bought airtime and basically created a hockey broadcast. So I did the play-by-play. I tried to do the sales. I wasn't very good at it. Thankfully, my dad and my grandma supported me financially to get me through that time, but it was a great experience. And then when I was 24, I applied for the Hamilton Bulldogs job and got it. So that was my big break. I was the youngest broadcaster in the American Hockey League at the time, very green. There were plenty of people who deserved to get that job before I did, but again, they must have seen something in me. So I got the job and worked my way up the ladder in that organization, and 13 years later, got my big break and got to follow in the footsteps of Peter Marr and be the voice of the Calgary Flames. So it's been quite a journey.
So speaking of the Calgary Flames, we'll get into the team currently right now. So the word on the street is that Mark Giordano potentially will be exposed by the Flames at the expansion draft. You know, where are you on the conversation of exposing Gio? Are you for exposing him? Are you for making a side deal that will keep him? Like, what say you, Derek?
Well, I want to keep him. But I also don't really think they have a choice but to expose him. But when you look at the 7-3-1 breakdown, I think the 7 forwards are pretty obvious. Although I did see something earlier this week, someone suggesting the Flames wouldn't protect Michael Backlund, which kind of left me shaking my head. I know they wanted to shake up the team, but I'm not sure you leave him exposed. I certainly wouldn't. And I think the goaltender's obvious. But when it comes to the defensemen, you've got 4 that you'd like to protect. Thankfully, they don't have to protect Juuso Välimäki. So I think because of their age and because I still think they have yet to really reach their potential or get to their prime, you have to protect Rasmus Andersson and Noah Hannafin. And I know Andersson probably didn't take as big a step last season as I thought that he would, as you guys probably thought that he would, but he's still a top 4 defenseman on, I think, any team in this league. So you protect him. Noah Hannafin, for me, took an enormous step last season. You definitely protect him. And I think you have to protect Chris Tanev. And I know there's an injury history there, but he hasn't missed the game in 2 seasons, regular season or playoffs. So he stayed healthy. His last year at the Canucks, his first year with the Flames, he was healthy. He's younger than Giordano. He's got 3 years left on his contract. Giordano's only got 1. So I think you have to leave Giordano unprotected, but I would try to make a deal with the Seattle Kraken to leave him alone, not to select him. The reason I would, a couple of reasons, guys. I know he got off to a tough start last year, but I thought Giordano, if he wasn't their best defenseman in the back half of the season, he was certainly their second best defenseman. So I know he's 37 going on 38, but he's still, I think, a top 4 guy, and on the Flames, a top pairing guy, and he makes whoever he plays with better. So he's not a player that, despite his age, appears to be in decline, at least not yet. It's going to happen sooner or later. Father Time's undefeated, but Giordano, because he works so hard off the ice, and because he doesn't have as much tread taken off the tires as some guys who started playing in this league earlier than he did, I still think he's got some miles left on those tires. But number 2, and this is kind of how I try to look at it from a practical side. Do you think the Flames, if they offered the Kraken a second-round pick, could get them to take somebody else?
I think a second-round pick would do it. I think so.
The fact that you have to think about it makes me believe that they'd think about it pretty seriously. I think they're probably asking for an arm and a leg right now. And I think Ryan Pike put it this way on Twitter yesterday. They might be asking for an arm and a leg now, but they might take an arm or a leg when they ultimately have to make a decision on what to do. The reason I bring up a second-round pick, I'd have a hard time giving up a first-round pick to protect him. Third-round pick's a no-brainer for me. Second-rounder makes sense from both sides, in my opinion. So let's just say that the Flames season goes south. You've given the Kraken a second-round pick to protect Giordano. Do you not think you could get a second-round pick for Gio come the trade deadline? I do.
I,
And
I think
maybe more.
I think you could, but I look at it this way too, where it's like I think you're 2 years past face value. What potentially could have gone back after his Norris Trophy win in season.
Well, we can't go back in time and change that, right? So you
We
have to
definitely
look at
can. We definitely can. You're right.
what his value is now. So if the Kraken would be willing to take a second round pick, and I've got to think they'd think long and hard about that, because try to look at it from their perspective. Okay, so they're asking for an arm and a leg right now, and you can't blame them. They saw what the Golden Knights did, and they're trying to go down that road and maximize their assets. But if the Flames offer you a second round pick and you still get to select a player, let's say Oliver Shillington. So you're getting a second round pick and you're getting a young defenseman with upside. What if the Flames trade Giordano between now and the expansion draft, or now and Saturday? Well, now you only get that player. You don't get the second round pick and that player. So if you're the Kraken, you can maximize your return from the Flames. You can get a second round pick and your pick of somebody else that's exposed in the expansion draft. I would take Shillington if I was them. And if you're the Flames, you get to protect your captain, keep your top four intact, and you give up a second round pick that if your season goes south, you could certainly recoup come the trade deadline. So for me, that's a win-win and more of a practical way to look at it. As the guy who's called his games for the last 7 years and got to know him as a player and as a person, I think it would be amazing if the Flames could find a way to keep him for the right price, give him a chance to finish his career here, give him a chance to play in his 1,000th NHL game this season in a Flames jersey. I think if they can do it for the right price, they should do it. And I know I'm probably in the minority saying that.
I actually agree with you, Derek. I've always said if you do leave him exposed, he's likely going to be taken by the Kraken. He's done so much for the hockey club and the community. His story in itself has been nothing short of phenomenal. From where he started undrafted and to becoming the captain of that, actually the only player defenseman in Flames history to win a Norris Trophy. I mean, like, the guy's given so much, and it would just be sad to see him leave this way.
It would be.
And in saying that, so I wanted to ask you a question, like your thoughts on the Johnny Gaudreau situation. Now with Johnny, we're hearing that there may be an extension that him and Treliving are working on. Now, would you agree with me if I think that would be the right move to make at this point? If you sign Johnny now, and if things go to shit this season for the Calgary Flames, at least he's under contract for however many years. And then if you need to make a move, you make that move at the trade deadline, and he's worth more because he's signed. He's extended for a certain number of years. So if they do move on from him, that would be the best route to go, I would suggest, rather than not signing him this summer, extending him this summer, and then if the Flames don't do good the next year there, if you're looking to move Johnny at the trade deadline, you're not getting much.
Yeah, I do agree that if they can get a deal done that works for the player and for the team, they should extend him. I look at the Flames and the struggles they had scoring goals last season. I think you guys would agree. If there was one thing that really held the Flames back, it was that they just didn't score enough goals. Because when they got to 3, they won almost every single game. So getting to 3 was the issue. And Johnny Gaudreau is the straw that stirs the drink offensively for this team, certainly in the power play. So for a team that struggled to score last season, trading your best offensive player, the only way I do it, guys, is if I felt like I couldn't get him signed to a long-term extension. Yeah. And they don't necessarily have to do it before the 28th. I think ideally they do it before the 28th because that's when his limited no move clause or no trade clause kicks in. And you go from having 31 teams to potentially move him to having 5. But he's a player who has time and time again said that he wants to stay in Calgary. And I know that there have been plenty of players who have said, I want to stay here or there in the past that didn't really mean it. But he has been very consistent in that messaging. And players, they're smart enough with the help of their agent or their family or whatever advisors they've got in their camp to figure out ways to dance around the questions that we ask them. I think Sam Bennett's a great example of that. So Sam was obviously not happy with the way this season started and with his usage. And then, of course, there was that Saturday night on headlines on Hockey Night in Canada where Elliot Friedman reported that, he'd like a change of scenery. I don't remember the exact wording, but something along those lines. And that kind of left a bit of a black cloud over the Flames for a while. And we all wondered what was going to happen. Could they change Bennett's mind and make him happy and convince him to stay? And I actually had a great relationship with Sam. And I asked him if his role changed and he was playing an increased role, if he would consider staying here long term or even just until the end of the season. And Sam danced around that question. He didn't say yes, he didn't say no, but for me, the fact that he didn't say yes was a no. But Johnny's never left us wondering about that. He's been very consistent in saying that he wants to be a member of this team long term. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and believe him. So if that's the case, and he's willing to sign a fair deal, doesn't have to be a team-friendly deal or a player-friendly deal, just something that works for both sides, I keep him. I do. Now, the one thing I would say about signing him and then potentially trading him later, you might have to give him a no trade or a no move clause to get him under contract long term. If he does want to stay here long term, I think that they would probably ask for that because it gives the player more control. Doesn't mean you can't trade him. It just kind of limits your options. So I would keep him if I could, and I do believe the Flames will find a way to do that.
So then what for you, if you were the general manager, would be the best possible deal that you would want to get Johnny Gaudreau done at?
Well, I think he's probably going to get a raise and deserves one. $6.75 million is not as much as he's worth. And if I had to kind of rank what Brad Treliving's done best as the general manager of the Calgary Flames, I would say re-signing his own guys. I think he's done an unbelievable job getting great value out of Johnny Gaudreau. And I know we had it down here, Sean Monahan, Mark Giordano, Michael Backlund. Elias Lindholm might have one of the best contracts in the league. Noah Hannafin's contract looks unbelievable right now. So Brad's done a great job getting his guys under contract again. So if he's at 6.75 now, does 7.5 times 6 get it done? Maybe. I think it's probably in the 7 to 8 range, assuming it's going to be, a 5 to 7 year deal. If I'm the Flames, I probably want to be around 6 as far as the term is concerned. And if I could be between 7 and 8, I think that would work for me. How about you guys?
I think if you were to get him at 6 years, sort of around what you're saying, around $7 to $8 million, I think that's a steal. Especially if the Flames are really on Jack Eichel, to go after and to get Johnny Gaudreau an elite number 1 centerman, that's a game changer. Mm-hmm. That 100% would change everything at that point.
And I know that both Johnny and Sean took a lot of heat last season, but something I've thought a lot about, and I thought a little bit about it during the season. I thought more about it during the offseason. Consider who was playing right wing on that line for most of the year. Yeah. It wasn't Elias Lindholm. It wasn't a guy who was definitely, no questions asked, a top 6 forward in this league. But, with all due respect to Josh Leivo, who I do think has upside, and if he comes back, I do think he could be a middle 6 forward for this team. He's not a legitimate top 6 guy. Maybe he turns into one, but he's not at this stage of his career.
Yeah,
it was a tough go for Dominic Simon. I think Brett Ritchie, if he had maybe a bit more touch around the net, could be the perfect type of player, the Michael Furlan type, who can skate, big body, who can bang and crash and do some dirty work. But he's really never had that goal scoring touch during his career. So I think that there are a number of Flames, and at the top of the list for me would be Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau, who are going to have bounce back years offensively. But for me, the Flames, they need to, if they're going to put those two back together again, and they may or they may not, you got to find them a legitimate top 6 guy to play with. So we'll see what the lines look like. Maybe they go back to the line they were using at the end of the year with Elias Lindholm between Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. That seemed to work pretty well, but it's kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket as well. And I know that Darryl Sutter is a coach who does like to spread things out. So we'll see. But I still think there's plenty of room for growth for a number of the Flames' top players coming off the season they had.
You're listening to the Inferno 403 podcast with the play-by-play voice of the Flames radio, Mr. Derek Wells. Derek, I have one last question for you before Noah does, and then we're going to actually head into what's called Into the Fire. That's 8 questions for you. We had Kent Wilson, who just completely he disappointed me. He only got 1 right. Ryan Binder did fairly better. He had 2 right. The bar is pretty low here, Derek. But my last question is: Matthew Tkachuk was a polarizing topic this year, I would say. He didn't seem to put the team on his back like he did in prior years. He just didn't seem to drag them into battle, so to speak. Rumors that there was a players only meeting and he was told to tone it down and all that stuff that none of us really know about. Where do you think he's headed? Do you think the Flames are actually looking to move him? Because there are talks that he may want out, or St. Louis may be interested, or maybe even Ottawa. Do you see, or do you think that there's any truth to that? Like, is he going to be qualified at $9 million a year as a RFA, and is he even a $9 million player, $9 million player a year now?
Well, if we get the next offseason, they have no choice but to qualify Matthew Tkachuk at $9 million. Is he a $9 million player? I think he can be. I think Matthew Tkachuk's a unicorn. I don't think there are many Matthew Tkachuks out there. His brother Brady would be, I think, probably the closest. He's turned into a heck of a hockey player. But Matthew Tkachuk, when he is on his game, can really impact the game in a positive way. Last season was interesting, though, wasn't it? Got off to a great start, if I'm not mistaken, and I am halfway through that off season here. So, unfortunately, I don't have the memory that my broadcast partner Peter Labardius has. So I've got to have notes in front of me. But I think Matthew scored 5 goals in the first 9 games, and then scored 5 in the next 40 or 50 games. And when you kind of look at the timeline of it, there was that puck flip after a tough loss to the Maple Leafs, when Jake Muzzin just flipped the puck at him and Matthew Tkachuk lost his mind. And full disclosure, I didn't travel with the team last year. So I did feel a little bit disconnected. And quite often when you're traveling with the team, you hear things, you see things that you can't even necessarily use on the air, but will lead you in one direction or another, or kind of give you an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. So I didn't have that access last season, but we've heard about this players only meeting. I'm not going to speculate on what was said or wasn't said, but I do know that Matthew Tkachuk's game seemed to change after that meeting. A guy who, as Glenn Gulletson used to say so eloquently, was in the fabric of the game, was not in the fabric of the game nearly as often as he had been to that point in his career. And he just didn't look like he was physically or emotionally as engaged as he was prior to that puck flip or team meeting or whatever happened behind the scenes. So, I do wonder, because I think for the most part, we didn't see Matthew Tkachuk at his best last season. And I know he really came around late in the season. So the sandwich, if you're looking at the sandwich of the season, the bread was really good. Like, best bread you've ever had. Great start, great finish. The meat wasn't so good. So Matthew Tkachuk is a pretty proud guy. I think he's going to bounce back this year. As far as your question, are they trying to trade him? No, I don't think they're trying to trade him. But I've said in the past, and I'll say it again to you guys, there isn't one untouchable player on this team for me. This is probably a bad example, but August 9th, 1988, Wayne Gretzky got traded or sold, depending on how you look at it. So if Wayne Gretzky in the prime of his career can get traded, then anybody can get traded. So I wouldn't call anybody on the Flames untouchable. With that said, there are a number of players who I wouldn't want to trade, but I'd be willing to trade if I could get the right return. Elias Lindholm, for me, is at the top of the list, guys. I just think between what he brings, he's their best forward. When you look at the 200-foot game, plays in all situations, obviously even strength, power play, penalty kill, plays against the other team's top players, and his contract. He, for me, is the most untouchable, even though there aren't any. He's the most untouchable player on the team. But Matthew Tkachuk's pretty high on that list as well. The one guy who I would move him for, and it would have to be as part of a package, would be Jack Eichel. When is the last time the Flames had an elite, no questions asked, I wouldn't call him generational, but maybe close, number one centerman. It's been a really long time. Those guys are hard to find. And you're playing in a
would be the last
division,
one.
with Connor McDavid. And Jack Eichel was taking one spot behind him. So I think that would be a ton of fun as far as the rivalry is concerned. And when I look at a big trade like that, and we know Brad Treliving's not afraid to make those types of deals, which, you know, if you're a fan of the team or you follow the team or cover the team, it's exciting, right? And who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Expansion draft, entry draft. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. So if I'm moving Jack Eichel, I want to move him as far as humanly possible away from Buffalo, if I'm the Sabres. And if I'm moving Matthew Tkachuk, I want to move him as far as humanly possible away from Calgary if I'm the Flames. So when I think about what could work for both teams, those are two names that I can tie together pretty easily. You never look, I don't think, the trade of Matthew Tkachuk because, again, he is a unicorn and he can bring so many things to the table. But if you have an opportunity to get, I wouldn't even say Jack Eichel type because there's not a lot of those guys out there, but, you know, a player like that, then I think you have to look at every option. So I'm not looking to trade Matthew Tkachuk, but if another general manager calls me about any of my players, if I'm Brad Treliving, I'm picking up the phone and listening. And we know he loves to work the phone. So we'll see what happens. I would think it would be unlikely if the Flames would A, trade for Jack Eichel and B, trade Matthew Tkachuk. But stranger things have happened. And the Sabres clearly have to move on from Eichel. And it really depends on what they want to get in return for him. If they want to press the reset button, which is probably what they should do, they should probably look for somebody who is either in their entry-level contract or high draft pick, someone who has yet to play in the league. You know, the Kings were tied to them for a little while. Quentin Byfield makes some sense to me as far as that's concerned. But, and Sabres ownership tends to be a little impatient. So if they want to try to be competitive sooner rather than later, for me, there aren't many players who could potentially help them do that than Matthew Tkachuk. There aren't a lot of guys around the league who could potentially be available in the Jack Eichel trade that make you better today as opposed to tomorrow. And we know what Matthew Tkachuk is. The league knows what Matthew Tkachuk is. There are 31 teams that hate him, and there are 31 teams that would love to have him. And I've got to think the Sabres are one of them.
I guess my final question before I head into the fire for you,
You're
Derek.
making me nervous about these fire questions, by the
way.
You should be. Noah picks some pretty hard ones.
Yeah, I bet. Hope I get one right at least.
Yeah. So my final question here for you, Derek, is all the talk around the city is about retool, rebuild, blow it up, etc. I think everybody knows where I'm on the conversation of things. But what about you? Do you think the Flames should go on a full reset, or do you think they should stick the course here with this group one last time?
It's such a tough question to answer, Noah, because I understand both sides. I really do. I think that they should probably give it a go this season, and for a number of reasons. They've got their core under contract for this year. It's next year where guys' contracts start to expire, right?
Yeah.
So they're still in their window to win. I said they were in a window to win 3 or 4 years ago when they signed all these guys to mid to long-term extensions, and I still think they're in that window to win, even though they're coming off a tough season. But consider this. They're going to be playing in what is probably the weakest division on paper in the NHL, like back to the Pacific Division. So I think you guys would agree the Golden Knights will go into the season as the favorite to finish first.
Yeah.
But I really think that the battle for second comes down to the Battle of Alberta. I think it's going to be either the Flames or the Oilers that finishes second. And a lot can happen between now and then, and a lot can happen during the course of an 82-game regular season schedule. But when I look at it now, I think Golden Knights, and then next tier would be Flames and Oilers, and then probably Canucks. And then you've got 3 California teams that are all in some sort of rebuild. And I do think that there's some potential with the Kings and the Sharks. I don't know what to make of the Sharks. They're a mess right now. I don't know what direction they're headed in. They're young, they're old, they're good, they're not. Anyways. And I think the Ducks have a pretty good core of young players and prospects, and they could be good in 2 or 3, 4 years, but they're not there yet. And then you've got the Kraken. Are they going to be the Golden Knights? I don't think so. but I didn't think the Golden Knights would be any good either, and went to the Stanley Cup Finals. So we'll have to wait and see what their team looks like after the expansion draft. But I think the Pacific Division is the division you want to be in if you're the Flames, because you should be a top 3 team in the division. So I'd give it another go. And another reason why I would is when I look at last season, after Daryl Sutter took over, and he has said, and players have said, it wasn't a system problem. The system wasn't the issue, but they needed a voice to really get the attention of the players. And even though there was a transition period, I know they started 3-0, and then they kind of spun their tires for a bit, and it was they lost 8 of 9, I think, which is really kind of what squashed their playoff hopes. Yeah. But they were playing some really good hockey down the stretch, and Sutter got them playing really tight defensively. Jacob Markstrom looked like the guy he looked like early in the season, as opposed to after that injury in the middle of the season when he was struggling. And when they got the 3 goals, as I said earlier, they almost won every single game. So if some of their offensive players, doesn't even have to be all of them, if some of them bounce back and kind of get back to their career norms this year, I think this is the team that's going to score 3 or more often than not. So I don't think everything has to go right for the Flames to have success and get to the Stanley Cup playoffs and potentially make a run. And hey, if you want an example of you just have to get in, don't you think the Montreal Canadiens are the perfect example of that? I mean, I am convinced that if the Flames had 1 or 2 weeks more runway at the end of the regular season, they would have finished in that playoff spot and not the Canadiens. Now, I know the Canadiens got Carey Price and Shea Weber and Brendan Gallagher and Jeff Petrie back for the playoffs, and that certainly was a shot in the arm, but they looked like the worst team going into the playoffs. They were the 16th seed, and I thought they had no chance in any of the 4 rounds they played in, and finally lost to an absolute juggernaut in the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it is true. You really do just have to get in, and if you've got the goaltending, which the Flames do, and everything kind of comes together, and you believe that you can win a game, win a series, win the Stanley Cup, some pretty crazy things can happen, as we saw with the Habs. So I think they should give this group, or some form of this group, another kick at the can. But if it doesn't work in 2021, 2022, I do think you have to think long and hard about maybe not rebuilding, but certainly resetting the team.
I guess I'll just play devil's advocate, I think, on the conversation here. It's like, see for me, it's like the Flames have tried to do the Montreal Islanders thing for the last 20 years now, whether it be, going on a magical run in the final in 2004, and then your first season, broadcasting the team in 14-15, where they beat the Vancouver Canucks and made it to round 2. The problem here is that the Flames have only won 4 playoff series since winning the Cup in '89. And that's sort of not a recipe for success. And when you're in the middle of the pack, that's death in this league. And, that's not enough for me. And the fact of the matter is making the playoffs, sort of for a fan like myself, it's just not good enough, right? I want a Stanley Cup, elite team every single year. And I want to be competing for a Stanley Cup every year, right? And not just making the playoffs and being like, okay, if we can get in, we'll see what happens here. But anyway, I digress, but
you know what, though, Noah, I do see where you're coming from. So let me kind of spin it into a perspective from a fan. Okay, so I'm a huge Miami Dolphins fan. So don't you think there's some parallels there? For the last 2 decades plus, the Miami Dolphins have been at best a middling team. At best.
Yep, man.
And it was a tough pill for me to swallow when they decided to tank for Tua. Full disclosure, this is coming from someone who since, I wouldn't say 1984, that's when I became a fan of the team. Okay. But I would say certainly since I was, a teenager, since I was in high school, growing up 40 minutes from Buffalo, 90% of the population, they were all Bills fans. So I wouldn't go to school for 2 or 3 days after the Bills beat the Dolphins. It was tough, but I've been a diehard Miami Dolphins fan for 35 years or so. So the Dan Marino years were fun, but there haven't been a lot of fun years since he retired. And it was a tough pill for me to swallow as a guy who watched every game that I could, not to watch one game in that season where they tanked. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And there were some pretty cool moments that season, but I just couldn't watch it. But I kind of came around on the tank because I was tired of them just spinning their tires and being mediocre at best. And it all worked out. They tanked, and they ended up being better than they thought they were going to be. Had the 5th pick, got the guy they thought they were going to have the first pick to get in Tua Tagovailoa. And now I think they probably got the best young team in the NFL. And within 2 or 3 years should be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So I understand where you're coming from, Noah. I really do. But I would say this, there's no guarantee that tearing it down and rebuilding it is going to lead you to the promised land. There's no guarantee of that in this league. It's difficult to do. You got to get lucky. I mean, just think about, you can have the first overall pick one year and it could be Nail Yakupov, or you could have it another year and it could be Connor McDavid. So if you're going to be bad, you got to be bad at the right time, don't you think, guys?
Yep.
And just again, I think Sam Bennett's a good hockey player. But what if the Flames had the 3rd overall pick instead of the 4th overall pick back in 2014? Maybe they still take Sam Bennett. I don't know. But Leon Draisaitl goes in that spot, and he's a franchise player. So I do see it from both sides, and I'm getting closer to the point where I do think they should give serious thought to, if not completely rebuilding the team, then a serious retool. But I'm not there yet because of what I saw last season. In 2004, they had the coach. They got them to play the right way to have success, but I don't think they have the talent or had the talent that they have now. Now they've got the talent and they've got the coach. And what I saw from the team under Daryl Sutter down the stretch leads me to believe that they should pick up where they left off. There's going to be no learning curve under the new head coach. Players went into the offseason. They'll go into the regular season knowing what he expects and what the standard is. And I can tell you that standard changed for the better. So I think this is a team that underperformed last season. I'll give them one last shot to find their game this season and see what happens and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting conversation, right? Like, I guess for me, I look at it more because of the next upcoming draft classes that we've got here. Whether it be Shane Wright and whether it be Connor Bedard, that could be future cornerstone players. I think for me, the time is now to do it, but they won't do it. And I know they won't do it because of ownership group and because you brought in Daryl Sutter. And we all know Daryl doesn't like to lose.
No.
And there's no way
he'll safe to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Murray Edwards doesn't like to lose either. And the Flames are so lucky. And I know that not everybody sees it this way, but the Flames are lucky to have the ownership group that they do. First of all, Murray Edwards allows Brad Treleving to hire a great management team and a great staff. How many coaches are they paying right now? Too many is the answer.
Probably 3.
You've now brought in an elite head coach that you had to pay for. And unlike a lot of teams in this league, regardless of how good or bad they are, Murray Edwards and the ownership group has given Brad Treleving the ability to spend to the cap every single season since I've been here. And not all teams can say that. So, the ownership group here is the furthest thing from the problem in my mind. They are giving the general manager the resources to be successful. Now it's just a matter of putting a team together that comes together and plays to their potential. And I think there's a lot more potential in the Flames than what we saw for most of last season.
Speaking of potential, I think you have the highest potential to overtake the lead in our Into the Fire.
I don't know,
because
I'm nervous.
As long as you beat Pinder, I think you're going to be you'll do all right.
I better beat Pinder because if I don't, I'll never hear the end of it.
That's right. But first, a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with Into the Fire with Derek Wills.
Hey everyone, I'm here to tell you about a new craft distillery in Calgary, Broken Spirits. These guys are making some amazing craft spirits and cocktails, from spiced sugarcane to different styles of gin. Broken Spirits are proud to be a part of the Inferno 403 crew and want to offer you 15% off your purchase, either in-house at the distillery or online at brokenspirits.ca. Just punch in the offer code Inferno 403 to claim your discount. Go in for a cocktail and check them out. You won't be disappointed.
Welcome back, everyone, to Inferno 403 episode with Derek Wills. We are now ready to head into our famous game called Into the Fire, where we ask Derek 8 Flames questions. Derek, are you ready to get started?
I'm sweating, guys. I don't know. Nervous. Better be Pinder.
Okay, so question number 1 here, and this is going back to your first season as play-by-play for the Calgary Flames. Who led the team in penalty minutes in the 14-15 season?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to go with Derek Englund.
It was Brendan Boleg.
Ah.
88.
How many games did he play in that year?
He played 62 games. Just imagine.
Okay, 0 for 1. 0 for 1.
Okay.
How many did Englund have? He fought 2 guys at once.
England had 53.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was he second at least? Was I close?
He was top 3 actually that year.
Okay.
All right, let's go here a second. Let's pull up question number 2. Okay, this is one you may get here. What was Johnny Gaudreau's exact stat line, goals, assists, and points in the 18-19 season?
36 goals, 66 assists, 99 points.
You got the goals.
Wait, 30. Wait, I did bad math. 36 goals, 63 assists, 99 points. I was doing the math.
Correct. 100% correct there, Derek.
Yeah.
You got that question right.
I just added it up in my head again. I'm like, no, that doesn't add up to 99. It's early in the morning, guys. I'm not finished my first coffee yet.
That's okay. In the 17-18 season, who led the Flames in plus minus?
17-18.
Yep.
Ooh. I'm going to go with I want to say Joe Colburn, but I'm not. I'm going to go with Mark Giordano.
It was Jaromir Jagr.
Get out of here.
Seriously. It was a +6.
That's not even possible. He could barely skate.
And he only played 22 games that year.
That tells you how bad the team was, right?
Yeah.
He scored 1 goal.
I would have never guessed that was Jagr.
Come on, Noah.
1 goal,
that's not
6
even fair.
assists. 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points, by the way, was the stat line, 22 games. And then he was a plus
7 points plus 6. Maybe they should have kept him.
In the 15-16 season, Johnny Gaudreau led the team with 78 points, scoring 30 goals and 48 assists. Who was second on that team in scoring that year?
What year was that?
15-16.
15-16. I'm going to go with Yuri Hudler.
Sean Monahan.
See, that was the easy answer, and I thought he's not going to ask me the easy answer questions. Was Hudler third at least?
Hudler, he played 53 games and 35 points. Because remember, he got traded as well to the Panther. It was to Dallas actually got traded.
Yeah, it Stars.
Well, we ended up getting back.
I really miss Yuri too.
We ended up getting back Dylan Dubé in that trade.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well.
What
am I, 1 for 4 now?
You got 4 more. You got 4 more to tie Tinder or beat them like 2. Okay. So you got this.
Let's see here. All right, let me pull up here.
I gotta start smarting myself is what I got to do.
Okay. Question number 5 we are on now, Loob?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 5. What was Brian Elliott's save percentage in the 2016-17 season?
Jesus. I need Peter Labardius for these questions. Holy smokes. Brian Elliott's save percentage.
Yep. Exact save percentage.
Well, this is like honestly just a pure guess. It's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, he was great down that stretch.
I'm 918.
910. Save percentage
good.
for Brian Elliott in the 16-17 season.
All right, another one wrong.
The sad reality about Brian Elliott is we remember him for what he obviously did in that series against Anaheim, but
or didn't do, which just stopped the puck.
Yeah.
Remember the last game? I remember saying,
oh my
one
God,
thing he can't do is give up a bad goal early.
he gives up a bad goal.
Like the worst. I think it was from like the popcorn stand in the corner of the rink. No good.
All right, let's see here. Question number 6. I'm about to pull up here. We are gonna go to the 1920 season. Okay, I got one. How many games did Zach Ronaldo play on the 2019-2020 Flames?
These questions, man, they're obscure. 2019-2020.
Yeah. Exact games played.
It's honestly going to just be a guess. 8?
19.
Yeah, not even close.
and you called every single one of them.
All those stats, I guess.
FYI,
I guess 11 of them weren't very memorable for me.
Let's see. All right, let's see.
You got to play this game with Lou, because I feel like he'd fare a lot better than I have and that Pinder did.
We're gonna save Lou. We're gonna save Lou for the season-ending episode, so that way you can try to clean it all up and get all 8 right.
Yeah, you ask him really hard questions though, like go back to like 1981.
Yeah,
it's still better than I've done, but yeah.
Okay, so question number 7. How many power play goals this season did Elias Lindholm register? So more recent.
Yeah. Again, I'm just guessing. I'm going to go with shortened season. I'm going to go with 7.
Oh, so close. 6 power play goals for Elias Lindholm this season. Oh, okay. The last question here, Derek. We'll give this one to you, man. We'll give you an easy one this time.
Okay.
In Game 6 of the 2015 first round series between the Flames and the Vancouver Canucks,
Matt Stajan.
Who scored the goal?
Let's go.
I was expecting more questions like that, not like how many chocolate bars did Yuri Hudler eat in the 2014-2015 season? Oh, okay.
Let's go. Hey, Pinder, suck it. He tied you.
Do I get a bonus point for answering before the question was done being asked? Give me a half hour there so I can beat Pinder.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's absolute pleasure. Always great here. Like we listen to you basically every day of our lives, and it's great to see you actually on the screen. And thank you for taking the time with us anyway today, Derek. It's been truly a pleasure for us.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, guys. Yeah, I apologize about having a face for radio. I'm trying to channel my inner Rick Ball here with the COVID beard. I think I'm going to keep it, even though COVID's almost over. But it's going to be an exciting couple of weeks here for the Flames. I can't wait to see what they do between the expansion draft. I feel like once the expansion draft is over, some dominoes might start to fall. Because I think you're a little bit handcuffed before you know who you're going to lose. And then you got the draft, and Brad loves to make trades at the draft. So I can't wait to see what the Flames look like a couple of weeks from now. And then when we get into free agency, it should be a fun time for all of us.
Yeah, last one for me, just before we wrap up here. I mean, you went to Hamilton and you had a great run there. And then you came here to Calgary in 2014. just after I call him the GOAT. I still do. Peter Marr, retired, and you have to fill some pretty big shoes here in Calgary, man. And I always say it on Twitter. I think you've done the best possible job that anybody can do. Replacing a legend of that caliber. So keep up everything you do, Derek, and keep up all the hard work on the Fan.
Well, thanks a lot, Noah. It's impossible to replace Peter Marr, so I've never tried to do that. Just tried to follow in his footsteps. And I think one way you can kind of cement yourself as a manager or a coach or a player, or even a broadcaster, is by calling some big games or playing in some big games. So hopefully I'll have some more big games to call, like that Game 6 back in 2015. And that'll be fun for all of us. So thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and go Flames, go.
Yep. Thanks, Derek.
All right. See you guys.